From 2 pounds of ordinary pork, you can make over 30 dried sausages that will last on your shelf for up to 2 years without a refrigerator. This exact technique is over 1,500 years old. Chinese families perfected it centuries before electricity existed, before modern canning, before any of the preservation methods we rely on today. 5 ingredients, no special equipment, and at the very end, I'm going to show you the one drying mistake that turns a perfectly good sausage into a breeding ground for dangerous bacteria. My name is Amelia, and today I'm recreating the full process from scratch. Let's get started. I have 2 pounds of pork shoulder sitting on my cutting board right now. Why pork shoulder specifically? Because this cut gives us the exact fat to lean ratio that makes the entire recipe work. We need roughly 70% lean meat and 30% fat. Too lean, and the sausage dries out into something that tastes like cardboard. Too fatty, and the sausage goes rancid during storage because animal fat oxidizes over time when exposed to air. Pork shoulder hits that balance naturally without any trimming or guesswork. This is the same logic Chinese families followed for generations. They understood that fat was not waste. Fat carries flavor, it delivers calories, and inside a cured sausage, it acts as a protective layer around every strand of meat fiber. When the sausage dries, that fat creates a natural barrier against oxygen. Less oxygen reaching the meat means slower spoilage. That is the entire foundation of this preservation method. I'm cutting the pork into small cubes, roughly ½ inch each. Consistency matters here. If the pieces are different sizes, they absorb the curing mixture unevenly. Some chunks pull in too much salt, others not enough. In the finished sausage, that becomes a real problem because the undercured sections become weak points where bacteria can establish themselves. Even pieces mean even curing, and even curing means a sausage that lasts. Now, while I'm working on this meat, let me tell you why this recipe even exists in the first place. The earliest written record of Chinese sausage making appears in an ancient agricultural text called the Qimen Yao Shu, compiled around 544 AD during the Northern Wei dynasty. That book documented a sausage stuffing technique that was already well established by then. The method described in that text used intestinal casings, minced meat, salt, fermented bean paste, and spices. No starch, no fillers, just meat, salt, seasoning, and natural casings. That core formula has barely changed in 1,500 years. The reason is simple: it works. The Chinese solved the problem of preserving meat without refrigeration long before most of the world even understood why food spoils. And the science behind their solution is something modern food scientists still study today. Let me show you the curing mixture. This is the heart of the recipe. I'm combining 3 tablespoons of sugar with 1 tablespoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, and 2 tablespoons of rice wine. Some traditional recipes also include a pinch of 5-spice powder. I'm adding that as well. Now, every single ingredient in this mixture has a specific preservation function. It's not just about flavor. Salt draws moisture out of the meat through osmosis. When water leaves the meat cells, the environment inside the sausage becomes hostile to bacteria. Food scientists measure this as water activity. Fresh meat has a water activity near 0.99. Most harmful bacteria cannot grow below 0.91. Salt is extremely efficient at pushing that number down. A solution of only about 13% salt by weight is enough to reach that critical threshold. Sugar works by the same mechanism. It binds free water molecules, making them unavailable for microbial growth. But sugar also does something else in this recipe. It counteracts the harshness of the salt and creates that signature sweet and savory flavor that makes Chinese sausage completely different from any Western dried meat. This is a flavor profile that has existed in southern China for centuries, and it's built entirely on the science of preservation. The rice wine is the third layer of protection. Alcohol inhibits bacterial growth directly. It also acts as a solvent, helping the salt and sugar penetrate deeper into the meat fibers during the curing process. Traditional Cantonese families used a specific fermented rice wine called Shaoxing wine for this step. Non-fermented wine or plain cooking sherry does not provide the same antimicrobial benefit. The fermentation process produces organic acids and compounds that actively suppress pathogen growth during the drying phase. This is not optional. It's a critical safety component. I'm pouring the entire curing mixture over the pork cubes and mixing everything together with my hands. I need every piece of meat coated completely. No dry spots, no pockets of uncured pork. I'm going to let this sit and marinate for at least 6 hours. Some traditional recipes call for overnight marination, up to 12 hours in the refrigerator. The longer the cure sits, the deeper the salt and sugar penetrate, and the more evenly the finished sausage dries. Tell me in the comments right now, have you ever made any kind of cured or dried meat at home? I'm genuinely curious how many people watching this have actually tried food preservation beyond basic freezing. 6 hours have passed. Look at the color change. The meat has darkened significantly, absorbed the soy sauce and wine, and the surface feels slightly tacky to the touch. That tackiness is exactly what we want. It tells us the curing mixture is doing its job. The proteins on the surface have started to bind with the salt, forming a thin outer layer called a pellicle. That pellicle is the sausage's first line of defense against spoilage. It seals the surface and creates a foundation for even drying later. Without this step, the sausage dries unevenly and the flavor stays shallow instead of penetrating all the way through. Now the casings. I'm using natural hog casings that I've soaked in warm water for about 30 minutes. Natural casings are porous. That's important. They allow moisture to escape during the drying process while keeping the meat contained and shaped. Synthetic casings trap moisture and create exactly the kind of sealed, oxygen-free environment where dangerous anaerobic bacteria like Clostridium botulinum can thrive. Natural casings breathe. They let the sausage dry from the outside in, which is exactly the mechanism that makes this preservation technique safe. I'm threading the casing onto a sausage stuffing funnel. You can use a dedicated sausage stuffer, or you can improvise with a wide-mouth funnel and a wooden spoon to push the meat through. The key is to fill the casing firmly but not too tight. Overpacking creates air pockets and increases the risk of the casing bursting during drying. Underpacking leaves gaps where moisture can pool. I'm aiming for a firm, even fill with no visible air bubbles. I'm tying off each sausage with kitchen twine at about 6-inch intervals. Traditional Chinese sausages are typically tied in pairs so they can be hung over a rod or a line for drying. I'm doing the same thing here. Each pair gets a loop of twine at the center so I can hang them. Now this next part is where most people who attempt this recipe at home get it completely wrong, and it is exactly the mistake I warned you about at the beginning. The drying phase. This is the single most critical step. Everything before this was preparation. This step determines whether you end up with a shelf-stable sausage that lasts for years, or a contaminated piece of meat that could make you seriously ill. The traditional method requires hanging these sausages in a cool, dry, well-ventilated area for a minimum of 5 to 7 days. The ideal temperature range is between 59 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit, with low humidity and consistent airflow. Southern Chinese families historically made these sausages during the winter months, specifically because the cool, dry winter air in provinces like Guangdong provided the perfect natural drying environment. Here is the mistake. If you dry these sausages in a warm, humid environment without adequate airflow, the surface moisture does not evaporate fast enough. The inside of the sausage stays wet, while the outside looks dry. That trapped interior moisture creates the exact conditions for bacterial growth. The sausage looks finished on the outside, but inside it is still dangerous. In a modern home, if you do not have a cool, dry space with good air circulation, you can use a food dehydrator set to the lowest temperature setting, or you can hang the sausages in front of a fan in a cool room. The point is constant airflow and low temperature. High heat cooks the sausage instead of drying it, and cooking destroys the curing process that gives this method its long shelf life. You need slow, cold, patient drying. That is not a suggestion, that is the rule. I'm hanging my sausages on a drying rack in a well-ventilated area. I'm positioning a small fan nearby to keep air moving across every surface. I'll rotate them daily to ensure even drying. What we're looking for after 5 to 7 days is a sausage that has lost roughly 1/3 of its original weight. The casing should feel firm and slightly wrinkled. The surface should have a dry, waxy appearance. When you bend the sausage gently, it should give slightly but feel dense and compact, not squishy or soft anywhere. While we wait, let me explain why this particular combination of preservation methods works so well together. There is a concept in food science called hurdle technology. Instead of relying on one extreme preservation method, like heavy salting or deep freezing, you use multiple moderate barriers that work together. In this sausage, the hurdles are salt-reducing water activity, sugar-binding free moisture, alcohol inhibiting bacteria directly, and air drying removing moisture from the product entirely. No single one of these steps alone would be enough to preserve meat for years. But combined, they create an environment where virtually no harmful microorganism can survive. Chinese families figured this out over 1,000 years before modern food scientists gave it a name. 7 days have passed. Look at these. The casings have tightened around the meat. The surface is dry with that characteristic waxy sheen. They've darkened to a deep reddish brown. When I press one between my fingers, it's firm and dense. No soft spots, no moisture anywhere on the surface. These are done. Now let me show you the proper way to store them for the long term. Do not skip this step. Improper storage is the second most common reason homemade cured sausages fail, right after the drying mistake I already covered. Every sausage gets wrapped individually in parchment paper first. The parchment prevents the sausages from sticking to each other and allows any residual micro-moisture to escape without being trapped against the surface. Over the parchment, I'm wrapping an aluminum foil. Tight, no gaps. The foil acts as a barrier against light, outside odors, and additional moisture from the surrounding environment. Stored in a cool, dark, dry place, these sausages will keep for 6 to 12 months at room temperature. Vacuum sealed or placed in an airtight container in the freezer, the shelf life extends up to 2 years. The combination of low water activity from the cure, plus the physical barriers of wrapping, plus cold temperature, creates 3 layers of protection working simultaneously. Write in the comments where you are watching from right now. I'm always amazed at how far these old recipes travel. Drop your country's flag below. Let me talk about what is actually inside each one of these sausages nutritionally. A single link, roughly 50 grams, contains approximately 8 to 10 grams of complete animal protein. That's the same quality protein found in any whole cut of pork. It contains B vitamins, including thiamine and niacin, both critical for energy metabolism. You're getting iron and zinc from the pork, minerals that support immune function and oxygen transport in the blood. The fat content runs around 10 to 15 grams per link, and that fat is carrying real calories, roughly 200 per sausage. In a survival scenario, calories are not the enemy. Calories are the resource that keeps your body functioning. 2 sausages provide enough protein and energy to sustain meaningful physical activity. 10 sausages, roughly 1 day's caloric needs for an adult. 1 batch of 30 sausages from 2 pounds of pork covers 3 full days of food. And the cost? At current prices, 2 pounds of pork shoulder runs between $4 and $6 depending on your area. The salt, sugar, soy sauce, wine, and casings cost a few dollars more. Total investment, roughly $8 to $10 for 30 sausages that last up to 2 years. That is pennies per serving. Now, the moment of truth. I'm pulling 1 sausage from the batch. I'm slicing it diagonally into thin coins, maybe a 1/4 inch thick. Look at that cross section. You can see the marbled pattern of lean meat and fat, a deep reddish-brown color throughout. No gray spots, no discoloration. That color comes from the soy sauce and the natural oxidation during the drying process. Traditional recipes sometimes add red yeast rice powder for a brighter red color, but it's cosmetic, not functional. I'm heating a pan on medium and placing these slices directly on the dry surface. No oil needed. The rendered fat inside the sausage is enough. Within 2 to 3 minutes, the fat begins to melt and the edges start to caramelize. The smell filling this kitchen right now is extraordinary. Sweet, savory, with a deep roasted pork aroma and just a hint of the rice wine and 5-spice coming through underneath. This is not processed meat. This is not a factory product. This is real pork, hand-cured, air-dried, and preserved using a method that predates modern civilization by over a millennium. I'm tossing a cup of cooked white rice into the same pan with the sausage slices. The rice absorbs the rendered fat immediately. Every grain picks up the sweet, smoky flavor from the sausage. The color of the rice shifts from plain white to a golden amber within seconds. In 3 minutes, I have a complete hot meal. Protein, fat, carbohydrates, all in one pan. You could add a handful of chopped green onion or a fried egg on top, and this becomes a restaurant-quality dish. But even by itself, this is a full, satisfying meal. The same meal Chinese families have been making from these sausages for hundreds of years. This is what real food preservation looks like. Not a laboratory, not a factory, not a chemical preservative in sight. Just pork, salt, sugar, wine, and time. 5 ingredients, 1 afternoon of work, and you walk away with 30 portions of dense, nutritious, shelf-stable food that sits quietly in your pantry waiting for the day you need it. Whether that day is a busy Tuesday when you do not feel like cooking, or something far more serious, the sausages do not care. They are ready either way. If you found this useful, hit the like button right now. And if you want to see more forgotten preservation techniques that actually work, subscribe so you do not miss the next one. I'll see you there.